Hello, and thank you for joining us for this week's edition of It's Your City. I'm your host, Cortney Bloomer, and we're here today with our guest, David Ruf from Greenhouse Garden Center. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're so excited to have you here because as we have been enjoying this nice weather, many people's thoughts have turned to what they're going to be doing in their gardens this spring.
That's right. And we are finding people having the itch coming in all the time. And, we've got a number of people. There's those people that want to do a bunch of yard work. And then there's those people that don't want to do
Don't want to do any yard work. And both of them need to come in now. So let's start out with those folks who maybe don't want to do yard work. They don't have a lot of time, or maybe just don't enjoy spending their summer afternoons pulling weeds. What should they do?
Okay, so now is a perfect time to be able to put down a pre-emergent, which will kill most of the weed seeds for you. And this will eliminate a lot of that hand weeding or spraying. Oftentimes people will say, well, I used 5 gallons of Roundup last year. Well, a little pre-emergent can go down, and it usually costs you about a penny a square foot. And you can put it down now while the rains and snows are coming.
Right.
And it will get washed in the ground for you. And then any other leaf material that is up, you can end up just going through and spraying with a lawn weed killer, because most of them are broadleaf weeds. And you are pretty much done with your weed control. You can throw down fertilizer right now and put it around the plants, not at the trunks, okay, but out around. And you need to also remember that fertilizer works with water. So if you don't have any water going to that spot, don't fertilize it. But you do those things, and you can put down an insecticide on plants that get a lot of bugs for you, like tree and shrub. One-time application takes care of them for the year. And those people that don't want to garden, those 3 things will eliminate probably 80% of the yard work that they have to do.
Right. So the pre-emergent on the places where you don't want grass, the fertilizer on the places where you do.
Want stump and grow, yes.
And then of course just treating just once for the insects, and you're done.
And you're done.
That
Yeah.
sounds very easy.
Yeah, it makes it a lot more enjoyable for those people who have a house and a yard that don't really want to work in the yard.
All right, so let's talk about the people who are real masochists like me, who
Okay.
want to try out here in Nevada to have a garden.
That's right. And, when you're out here, I need to warn you that gardening in Nevada is oftentimes far more difficult than it is gardening in California, let's say.
Frustrating. I would describe it as sometimes frustrating.
That's right. And so, we have usually a poor soil mix. We have no nutrients or fertilizer in our soil. Water is rare or infrequent or not at all. Or
we've had a few years of pretty much not at all.
That's right. And, so adding organics to the soil to build up the tilth or the health of the soil is huge for you. And, the more organics you can usually work into the soil at the very beginning, you will see a huge improvement on how well the plants do. You'll be able to water less, and you'll be able to fertilize less and get more benefit out of both of those items.
And at the garden center, you guys have a lot of options of great organic material.
We have a lot of options of great organic material. We are the area provider for First Full Circle Compost. So if there's people out there that are fans of that, this is the place to come in and pick it up now. We've got it in bulk and in bags, so it's easy, stop in and on your way. We have our own organics as far as a lot of different potting soils and amendments to add to the soil also. The fertilizers that we carry span, multitudes of needs for people, and so we've got all of that. And the sooner you can put the fertilizer down, usually the better your plants are going to do. If you can fertilize in November to February, you'll see more benefit than if you fertilize in March, April, or May.
Okay, it's March. So have we missed the boat?
No, because it's still early March. And, watching the future cast for the weather here, we're cooling down and we are going to end up having more storms coming through. So this will help get a lot of that into the ground.
Like you mentioned, having the fertilizer down, working with water. So get it in there. These storms that we're having this week, hopefully, will wash it down into your garden.
That's right. That's right. We want it to get into the soil because even if you have a drip system, the water profile will spread out underneath the ground and come in contact with fertilizer. So if you just bunch it up in the top, pile it up, these rains hopefully will spread it down and get it to be out into the soil. So when you add your drip water to it, it's readily available to the plant roots.
And there are different fertilizers for different plants, of course. And the staff at the garden center are super helpful about that. I have been in and had folks help me out picking out the supplies that I need. So if you are getting started in gardening, you can help.
That's right. We can help. And, I will warn people that come in and they look at all these different fertilizers. It's always good for you to realize that our soils are very depleted in nitrogen, which is the first thing on a package of fertilizer. So you always want to make sure that you get nitrogen for anything that you're doing.
Yeah, so let's just for a second, for people who maybe don't know about what you're talking about with the first thing on the fertilizer being nitrogen.
Okay.
NPK.
NPK.
So the first number
is nitrogen. And that is for growth. Okay.
Of the plant, the green parts of the plant, right?
That's correct. The P is for the fruit and the roots and the flowers. And then the K is for the overall health of the plant and the absorption of the nutrients out of the soil. So we are terribly lacking in nitrogen, so you want to get a high number there. And then depending on where you live, you may have a lot of phosphorus, which is the P, and you may not, or you may have a lot of potash, which is the K. And so, a little soil test for, I would say $6, I think is what it costs, will end up allowing you to pick a really good fertilizer for your specific site.
All right, good tip.
Yeah.
Find some soil and test it.
And test it. I will tell you, you can do it for the same as maybe like a Starbucks fancy drink.
Right. And your reward
is going to be
a season of successful gardening.
Or much better than
than it would have been otherwise.
That's right.
All right, so we've talked about people who don't want to garden and the first steps for people who do, which is getting the soil conditioned to be successful at growing plants. Mm-hmm. The exciting part, of course, is the growing of the plants.
That's right.
So when can we start doing that?
I will tell you March 1st to March 15th, you can start with a lot of leafy vegetables. You can start with almost all your root vegetables with the exception of potatoes. You can start with peas. You can also do a lot of flowers out there. Poppies, milkweed. If you're a monarch butterfly enthusiast, you do milkweed then. Poppies. A lot of these things we can get started now from seed directly into the garden. It's freezing, I realize that, but these plants do very well with this cold temperature. They don't like the hot, dry of Nevada summers.
Right, so now is the time for some of these plants. Not tomatoes.
Not tomatoes, not squash, not peppers, but things that you're going to eat the foliage of for the most part.
Spinach, chard, kale.
Yep, lettuce.
Good choices for now.
Good choices for now. And things that you're going to eat the roots of. Radishes, parsnips, carrots, beets. So all of that. You can start planting it now. And usually in 2 months, you'll have a crop that you can harvest.
Just in time to rip those things out.
And then put in your tomatoes.
Put in the tomatoes and the peppers and the eggplants and the squash.
That's right.
All right. So getting started in the garden, now is the time to get these things planted. What about some of those summer crops? If you want to start them from seed, it's not going to be that much longer.
Not that much longer. Now, I often warn people, don't get bitten by the bug too early, scratched the itch. Peppers are probably the longest seedling to get started and grow. That usually is 8 to 10 weeks for most people. Tomatoes are 4 to 8 weeks. Squash are 2 to 3 weeks. And this is before the last frost, which often occurs here in Carson right around Memorial Day. Dayton is usually middle of May. Reno is beginning of May, and Gardnerville is generally the 9th of June.
So a little bit later down there. Those folks need to hold off just a little bit longer than the rest of us. A little more chilly.
A little more chilly, yep. A little higher elevation, a little less density of population.
Right. So that May date is the kind of target for setting things outside.
Right. And so if you realize that, if it's going to freeze right around Memorial Day and you want to do tomatoes from seed, start them in your house, the 1st of May or the middle of April, and you'll be right on target for a nice sized plant that you can move without it being too leggy and, wimpy and falling over for you.
All right. For those of us who still feel like we need a little help, even after these tips.
Yes.
The Garden Center offers a full slate of classes. Now, just this past weekend was the Get a Jump on Spring class that you guys offered. And you went over some of the same stuff that we talked about here today.
Right.
But there are more classes coming up. The next class on the schedule is tree pruning.
Yes. Tree, shrub, rose pruning. And, all of our classes are free, but we do ask for a $2 donation, which goes to Ron Woods this year. And so we do that. But, it's a donation. So you can come in. The classes are usually at 10 o'clock in the morning for March and April. So a number of them are held outside. I want you to dress warmly. But with the pruning class, it's like a 2.5 hour long class. You go over different equipment, how to be safe. You'll be shown how to prune properly, different tools and how they're best used. So it's a great little startup for most people. And then there's hands-on where you can go out and look at, trying out some different pieces of loppers or pruners there for you also.
All right, a great chance to learn about that. Many folks around here do have trees in their yard.
Yeah.
And those trees probably don't necessarily get all the care that they could. They could do better if folks would prune them.
Oftentimes, and pruning, is one of those things where some people are better at grooming than others, and not necessarily does a tree always need to be pruned or a plant need to be pruned, but when it does need it, it's always good to be able to do it close to correctly so that you're not making big dead spots in it or cutting all the flowers off.
Right, and the timing is a big issue as well.
Right, timing is always big because oftentimes people think, well, it's wintertime and I want to prune everything. Well, when you prune in the wintertime, you cut off the flowers on your lilacs, you cut off the flowers on your quince, your forsythia, and you end up having a yard that has flowers for like a week, and then it's done in your neighbor's yard down the street that looks, a little more
resplendent in its flowers.
Right. And you're like, how is that happening? And it's usually just knowing how to prune properly.
All right, so come to the pruning class.
Come to the pruning class.
And there are a number of other classes. There's one coming up about mason bees, which are a great beneficial insect for people to have in their gardens.
Yeah, it's a great pollinator for fruit trees, and everybody around here can have mason bees. They're called the stingless bee or the blue bee, and you can have a little hive set up for them.
Right, they kind of look like little birdhouses with little tiny holes in them.
Tubes in them,
yeah.
And so, you can end up doing mason bees if you want, and they're a friendly little bee. You wouldn't really notice that they're a bee actually to most people. Most people are familiar with the honeybee. But we've got the mason bee class. We also will have pond class coming up, and then one on starting your vegetables.
All right.
Yeah.
And people can figure out when all the classes are and find the classes that they want by going to the Greenhouse Garden Center's website.
They can go to the website. They can, come in, stop in. We've got a schedule usually listed right on the counter by the cash registers. We'll be happy to give you one. And we'd love to see you.
All right. There are plenty of things. The time is now to get started, whether you want a garden or not.
That's right.
Head down to Greenhouse Garden Center, get your supplies. Anything else you want to add?
I just will say that there's a number of different things that will be happening also. When the apple trees are in bloom here, there's a chance for a disease called fire blight to happen. And so if you notice dead branches in your apples or pears, spraying with a fire blight spray is very beneficial to do in the spring here while the tree is in bloom. And then if you have worms in your apples or have
Okay,
had worms,
I have had worms in my apples.
You've had worms in your apples. There's a number of sprays that you spray when or after the tree is done blooming on the apple tree, and you spray once a week for 3 weeks, and you can basically be free of worms in your apples.
All right.
Okay.
It sounds like I need to stop in and get that.
That's right, you do.
All right. Thanks so much for being here today. And thanks to all of you for joining us for this week's edition of It's Your City. If you would like to sponsor a future edition of It's Your City, aired on Carson Now, YouTube, Facebook, and on Public Access, Charter Channel 193, contact Darla at the address shown on your screen. Once again, this is It's Your City, and I'm Cortney Bloomer. We'll see you next week.